Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I have here Mr. John Shrader. He is the owner of Environmental Health Specialties, and I'm very proud to say he is my friend. And so, John, tell us about you, and we'll get into a good conversation.
Okay, well, 59 years old, been in the industry now for 36 years. I found my career on a 3x5 card as I was getting ready to graduate from Lamar University. Before that, I'd never heard of a registered sanitarian. And anyway, as the job offers happened, there were three, and this was the most lucrative, which wasn't very lucrative, but it was better than the others. And I find it very interesting 36 years later that a career path that I'd never heard of turned out to be such a rewarding one in the end. I feel like I've done good things over the years and helped a lot of folks. And my mission is to kind of make the world a little bit healthier with everything I do. And I can honestly say that we've been able to accomplish that.
Awesome. And so where did you start off at? Wasn't in Baytown, was it?
No, I was born in West Texas. My father was a Shell oil man.
Okay.
And so we started out in a little place called Odessa, and then went to a smaller place called No Trees. And then from there wound up in New Orleans for 6 years. Went to Traverse City, Michigan in my freshman year of high school. And about 2 days after I graduated, we moved back to Houston. And with a lot of encouragement and stimuli from my parents, I wound up at Lamar University for college.
Okay.
And then when I graduated, I found this job in Baytown, Texas, working for their environmental health department.
Yeah, that's where we met, at the city of Baytown. You were in charge of the mosquito control.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a little job part-time in the evenings right after I got off of work from working for the water department, working for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left, and before I knew it, you left.
Yeah. I'll issue a compliment that you're one of my better employees at the mosquito control, although
Thank
I
you.
really didn't have too many that were bad. You were one of my better, and certainly an enjoyable person to work with. And I don't know how you do that, to work a 40-hour plus week and then drive 2, 3, 4, 5 hours at 10 miles an hour through the city on a mosquito truck. That's and the city wasn't exactly funding that operation very well back then. So, we really pulled off something somewhat of an accomplishment to have been able to do what we did. Kept a little bit of disease from happening with our efforts, and a lot of annoyance. Anyway, yeah, so after 15 years of working for the city, I just decided that I had always kind of wanted to start a business of my own. And I was basically in a house that was nearly paid for, and I had no children at the time. And I thought, if there was ever a time to start a business, this is it. And so I turned in my resignation, and in January of 2000, and basically with a pickup truck and a tool bag, I started a business. I took all those antlers that the city had on my head with all the hats of expertise, and took 5 of those and said, okay, these are available for marketing, pool inspection, food sanitation, food safety, should I say, pest and vector control, indoor air quality, sewage. and put those on the market. And over the years, kind of whittled down to now it's primarily on-site sewage facilities and pest management.
So if anybody doesn't know, on-site sewage facility is septic tank.
Septic tank, that's right. Simplified a little bit.
It's a little more complicated than that, but I mean, it has changed so much over the years. I don't know how far back they started using the aerated systems, but I know I'd kind of got in, I guess, the beginning of that.
Pretty close. I think along about 1988 is when that technology came into availability, and it was very much infantile and took a long time to work out the bugs and make it what it is today. It can be a very good, effective system if it's done right.
Just take care of it.
Yeah.
Make sure regular maintenance and all those good things.
Start with an honest design, install it like it needs to be, and then take care of it and live within the boundaries of what you designed it for, and it will do its job.
Well,
ignore it or overuse it, and it won't.
Exactly. Well, you know, in the business, we always say it's a crappy job, but you know,
it's called job security over here because you don't want to do it. I get to, therefore I get to stay employed.
Well, do you have any advice that you could give folks out there? Maybe they're just now getting a septic system, or maybe they've got one of the older ones and they're going to have to get into the new ones.
Oh goodness, that's a really huge question. First off, the old septic tank system with gravity-fed tanks to gravity-fed drain fields still do exist in certain parts of the state and country. They're still the preferred system because they require the least of maintenance, the least oversight and inspection process. But in sites that the soil is not suitable, they're not very well suited for that. And it goes to figure that if the soil isn't going to absorb it like it needs to, then you need to have some other kind of a choice. So if you're in one of these areas like we're here on the Gulf Coast, basically we have clay soils and high water tables. During certain seasons of the year, the water table is the grass because it's wet from there down, and the water doesn't run off very well. So you can imagine a bathtub, and a gravity-fed drain field is very similar to a bathtub. It's just a very long bathtub. It may have multiple fingers on the bathtub, but essentially once the ground gets wet, the entire soil structure is wet, and there's nowhere to put the water coming from your toilets into that system without expecting it to bubble up somewhere. And it can bubble up and run off into your yard, your neighbor's yard, the ditch. In my case, before we bought this house, we inspected it. Sunny weather, lovely. Started raining. We decided we'd buy the house. It rained for 5 days. We signed the papers on the 4th day, sent the electrician out on the 5th day to rewire the house, and the toilet bubbled up in the shower. So none of us are immune. And, you know, if that is what you've got, expect that you're going to replace it. And I expected I was going to. The question was I going to do it today, or was I going to do it in 6 months or 2 months or a year? You know, it's been here since 1961. They said it was fine.
Of course.
Yeah, we've never had any problem with it. But yeah, the washing machine and kitchen were running straight to the ditch. In that era, there were no rules, so you just did what you wanted to do, or whatever the installer thought was best, and in his wisdom of what is right. And so you just got what you got. And so I knew I was going to replace it, and we ended up designing before we could move in. We had to design and put one in. So there's piece one is, before you buy a property that's already got a septic system, be it old or new, let somebody look at it that knows what they're doing. And what they're seeing, because there's a wide variety of standards to no standards of what that inspection should be. And you don't want to buy a system that is going to fail like mine did, and you're out, you bought the home and now you're out $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to put in a system to serve your needs. Otherwise, you can't live there. You'll wind up getting violations from the county or the city or wherever the authorized agency is, whatever they're called. It could be a river authority, for instance, or the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Any of them could wind up issuing violations to you, and they're violations that could be reoccurring every day. And let's not even worry about the violations. You've got sewage running out in your yard or into the house, and that's not what you want.
Of course
So,
not.
yeah, let's look at it before you buy the house or the business. And if we need to, let's either fix it or design something that's going to serve your needs, because everyone's needs are different. I could ramble on, so let's stop right there and
Well,
let that just kind of be our starting point.
right. Well, can you kind of explain why those newer systems are more advantageous than the older ones as far as like the environment goes? And I mean, even though both waters are not potable, the ones coming out of the aerated systems are a lot cleaner, right?
Oh, yes. It's a fairly simple explanation. The old system, gravity fed, drain from the house into tanks, gravity fed into the drain field. The tanks are basically a separation chamber. It's what you call your anaerobic primary treatment. And basically its primary function is separating the solids from the liquids. I don't think I need to describe what those solids are. Okay. And it's an anaerobic process, so it smells. The bacteria that are doing the digestion inside that tank, they come from you, and some of them create some pretty foul, obnoxious odors, and those are vented back through the plumbing of the house or the structure as plumbing code goes. The true treatment system there, though, is not the tank, it is the soil. And as long as the sewage absorbs into the soil, the bacteria and the filtration and the electrical charges within the soil particles breaks up the pathogenic bacteria, and it absorbs into the soil. Some of it becomes fertilizer for the vegetation, but basically we filter and break down the bacteria to really eliminate the biological potential health hazard.
I don't think
Okay.
people understand the importance of what shouldn't go in the system, because how many times have you gone out to a place that hasn't had the system very long and it's been backed up or it's not running properly?
Yeah. Okay. Let me come back around to that. Okay. The difference between your standard or conventional old style septic system is the gravity feed process.
Right.
If you've got one that's got a pump in it, it's generally a red flag that says something went wrong and we're just forcing it out of the house, out of the tank so that we can flush it into the tank. But it says something went wrong more than likely. There are a number of systems that have pumping systems in there that are supposed to be there, but too often it's just been a band-aid to allow the toilet to flush. Now, we get to the advanced systems that have aerobic processes. Now, the big difference is that before it leaves the tank, it's basically been treated. It's what you call primary separation treatment, just like a septic tank. And then you have aerobic treatment, wherein we change the environment by pumping air into the sewage. We bring to life the bacteria that don't create the obnoxious odors and that are more vigorous in their consumption, their digestion of the sewage waste. The waste, our waste, is food. And so the aerobic process is a more complete treatment process. And then there are basically two different mechanisms of disposal, either surface application wherein you need to disinfect, so you're giving it a final elimination by killing the bacteria with disinfectants before you discharge it into the environment on the lawn, or there are a couple of underground distribution mechanisms that will save time for that other discussion, but it's underground distribution via a pump, equalized distribution. And once again, your soil is the final cleansing of the pathogens from the environment versus it just running out onto the ground. So with any of these, if the sewage is running out onto the ground, it's raw sewage, and that is a potential health hazard. Okay, now to your question of putting stuff in it, I have a 2-page sheet that I can summarize in about a paragraph. Basically, these systems are a continuation of your digestive process. So if it's bad for you, it's bad for the system. If you wouldn't eat it, then it shouldn't go into the system. If you haven't eaten it, it's not ready to go into the system. And basically what that comes around to is overuse of the garbage disposal, putting down excessive solids. It's just not digested. You're going to wind up having to vacuum the system more frequently, increasing your cost, versus if it's already been eaten and digested in you, it's already partially broken down. You'll extend the life and the maintenance requirements for your system by adhering to that principle.
Well, no, one thing that we always ran into was you'd open up that one tank and you'd see a layer of white, which end up being all those medications people take. And that ends up killing off the bacteria, which is much needed in the system.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, there are a lot of things that will kill the bacteria. And once again, the bacteria is coming from your digestive system. So if it's bad for you, it's bad for them, the bacteria in the system. And so some, not all medications, large amounts of cooking oil can be a problem. For sure, any kind of motor oil, petroleum product, paint, heavy disposal of cleaning products. Normal use, that's one thing. The system's intended and designed for that. But excessive dumping of disinfectants is very bad for the bacteria in the system. Matter of fact, you might not think much of it. Well, you might because you worked in it. But we are so accustomed to, we're almost bacteriophobic. We want to have this clean, sanitary, hygienic environment where we perceive that we've just eliminated all microbes. It's just not a realistic expectation. And one of those avenues that we pursue is that we put the disinfecting tablets in the toilet. Well, that's a little bit of disinfecting every time we flush. So we kill the bacteria in the system. And so it becomes less effective in its digestion process, and therefore increases our cost and lowers the quality of the effluent that we're discharging into the environment. So clean your toilet from time to time, but don't put the disinfectant tablet in there.
Right. Now, one thing else that we ran across, people would say, oh, well, I bought this over-the-counter stuff that's supposed to clean my septic system. All I have to do is pour this bottle in there. What is your advice on those things?
Back to the principles of that paragraph digested of 2 pages. If you wouldn't eat it, then don't put it in there. And for the 21 years that I've been directly involved in this industry, that is the repeated message. If they're offering you a product that makes everything better, save your money. Just keep your money. It is, once again, it's a continuation of your digestive process. And so anything that would upset the balance of that process, you probably ought to just leave it alone. Leave it at the store. Yeah, don't spend your money on it.
Well, something else that people probably aren't getting from the conversation is that you do more than just septic systems. Can you tell what else that you do in environmental health specialties?
Well, I'm still engaged in the pest management side of things. So any of your average, typical, everyday pest. This morning we continued some work on a German cockroach removal project. It's not an overnight wave the wand kind of thing. This is the 3rd trip. I expect probably 2 more before we're finished there. But if you have a German cockroach infestation, it's literally we're trying to get to 0. Other pests, it's a management program. It's not an eradication of all pests. There's no such thing as none. But you can exclude most For instance, rats and rodents, rats and mice, you can exclude them from the home if pretty effectively. But German roaches, they come in with something you've brought into the house. They don't just come from the yard. They don't live in the yard. They live somewhere else, and we bring them home. In this case, they brought it home in a used refrigerator.
Mm.
And, they just put the house together, everything was fine. Then all of a sudden they start seeing roaches. And, if a roach can lay 50 eggs, then in less than a month, you've got thousands of roaches. Yeah, so it's really nasty. But anyway, those are the two primary things that I engage in now. Although I have been engaged in food safety for many years, but I've kind of let that side go. For about 3 years, I did indoor air quality and mold inspections. And the swimming pool program didn't last very long at all, but it's a business. You're trying to make a little bit of money on your knowledge, and folks generally, unless they're forced to, they don't necessarily want to just shell out more money. In some areas like food safety, yes. In sewage and pest management, folks are very averse to those kind of inconveniences, and so they're a little bit more willing to engage somebody that knows what they're doing to help them stay out of trouble and not be inconvenienced.
Yeah, so many times people don't think about these things until there's a problem.
Right.
There's no preventative maintenance, it seems.
Yeah. If I can flush my potty, then everything's fine. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not.
Well, I used to be in pest control before I started with the city. Worked. It isn't even there anymore. It used to be Tri-City Exterminating there in Baytown.
I remember them.
And I mean, things over the years have changed so much from the way we used to do pest control. And it had changed quite a bit when I was there in the early 90s. And a lot of the things that we got to use back then, I don't think you can use anymore, just like the time before I came up. So what kind of pest control stuff do you get to use?
Well, I'd like to say that we're getting smarter as a species in our technology and understanding of pesticides and the interrelationship with the environment that we're using them. You want to control the pest, but not damage the environment in doing so. And you'll still hear a lot of reluctance and kickback that I could use oh, goodness gracious.
I was trying to think of that stuff too.
Yeah.
It's against the law now. If you even get caught with it, you can go to jail or get a hefty fine or both.
Right. It'll come to me here in a minute, but there are a number of pesticides that have been taken off the market, and for good reason. They are upsetting the environment. They're either attaching to the soils too long, or they're washing off into the water streams and causing everything from hormonal changes where we're having multi-sexed critters to the spawning of fish. The eggs weren't. The spawning of fish. The pesticide was getting into the stream, into the food that the fish ate. The fish ate. The fish were eaten by the eagles. The eagles' eggs were not solid enough so that they went to term and would hatch as an eagle. And well, you just don't want to wipe out your national symbol,
right?
As much as we don't like being told we can't do stuff, and we say the government don't control, blah blah blah, it's based on science, and you have to respect that there's some benefit in it that is probably directed toward saving your life to begin with, saving the world around you, so that the world is enjoyable and hospitable to you, because we're not the end species, we're just a species, and all those other things that we are trying to save in our wiser use of pesticides. If we kill them, we're aiming the arrow at us eventually.
I was trying to think of the name of it. I want to say it started with a D, but I cannot remember to save my life.
Well, I know some of the byproducts of TCDD, and then there's 2,4-D, and it'll come to me here in just a minute. Kind of shocked that I can't think of it right this second.
That's us just getting old.
that and the camera's on me, so
well, I'd go to houses and people say, well, y'all used to spray this stuff that it worked forever and now it doesn't work anymore, and my neighbor put such and such around his house and didn't have termites for 60 years, but yeah, but what have you done to the environment around your house too? That's the people don't stop at that.
Chlordane was one of those.
That's what I was trying to think of. It started with a C, not a D.
Now there's some third world countries that are still getting it and getting to use it. Now, is that wise? I dare say probably not. They just don't have the environmental rules that we do that keep us from continuing to make bad decisions.
Yeah, don't even get caught with it.
Right. Yeah, back in our city days, we would get calls from time to time. I've got this bottle on the shelf, and sometimes it would have a label and sometimes not. How do I get rid of it? Well, there's not a good answer. Certainly not pour it down the drain, because your sewer system isn't going to clean it up before it winds up in the stream. And using it, well, you don't even have a label, so you don't know what the law, which is the label, said it was a legal way to use it. And you can still use things that you still got a label for, but you don't want to be reckless, and it's your world.
No, exactly.
And the Indians said, we're not inheriting it from our forefathers, we're borrowing it from our children. So what are we leaving for the next generation?
Well, let's say there was things that could work really well, but at what cost?
I remembered another one, and you said there was a D. Well, DDT.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
that might have been what I was trying to think of.
I bet it was. There was a time that body louse were such a problem in America, and bed bugs, that we were spraying folks down directly. Well, it worked, but at what cost, in the bigger scheme of things? I mean, there are films, newsreels of folks just standing in front of the cloud of the dust being sprinkled all over them. So they're breathing it there. So how many cancers came about 20 years later from that behavior? We don't know, because we didn't test for it. Exactly. We just had a solution for the bed bug and the body louse.
And that goes along with things like asbestos and look at what it's done to the older generation. These people are dying off from these cancers that have come from all this stuff. Nobody knew that it happened. Took how many years before we realized these things weren't good for us?
Right. It had an application, asbestos. It was a wonderful insulator. It was a very solid material for roofing tiles and floor tiles. But when it broke into little fibers, it got into people's lungs and caused those cancers and breathing problems, and people died. It took a while to find out.
It's really funny, some of the things that you look back on that were really bad for us, but at one time doctors recommended it. That they used to recommend cigarettes for pregnant women who were constipated.
I didn't know that specifically, but I was feeling like we were heading down that path. Yeah, cigarettes at one time were recommended. They were given to soldiers. They were glamorized by Hollywood. And then they said, these are causing people to get cancer and die. And they said, shh, don't say that. And it took many years, a couple of decades, for the authorities to allow that little label on the side that says this could be hazardous to your health. And then 30, 40 more years before they said, they've had documents all along that the folks making money from this knew they were putting things in that were killing people. You look at that today and you say, well, those same companies are making the vape systems.
Yeah.
The jury's still out there. Those are saying, hey, this is bad. And a lot of naysayers that are saying, oh, it's not near as bad. Don't worry about that. I've done my research.
Yeah, those things aren't as good as people think they are. They don't
Mhm.
realize how much they're really drawing into their lungs when they smoke those things.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And what else is there? I mean, somebody's making money on it. Do you really think they're all that worried about how long you're going to live well?
Most of them folks, they make their money, and by the time people find out it's bad for them, they're retired or dead.
Yeah, yeah,
That's,
on down the road. So I'm going to trip into another little category that's not always welcomed by everyone, but the world of genetically modified food and adulterated foods to
mhm.
preserve them on the shelf forever. I believe that we're going to see that same cigarette path in these one of these days. It's going to take a while because it takes a while to manifest a problem over a chronic history, and then the research to be done that conclusively comes back and says, oh, sure enough. But generally speaking, there is an expression called GRAS, generally recognized as safe, that the FDA uses to say, hey, well, we've tested this product or this substance that we're going to put in food to preserve its life or hold the color or whatever other benefit that it may have in the food. And well, it didn't seem to harm the mice too bad in a short term test. And so at this level, we think it's generally recognized as safe for human consumption. But we don't think about the bald eagle and the food chain of the greater species and bioaccumulation and eating it over a course of 20, 30 years. Is the body processing it out, or is it locking up somewhere in tissues that manifest into other chronic illnesses? Let's say ADHD, let's contemplate arthritis, let's look at diabetes, let's look at cancer. Are these connected, or is it all just a John's hyper alerted fears? And then genetically modified, we just don't have any business modifying food. If you're crossbreeding, okay, I get that. That's been happening since the beginning of time. But splicing genes, kind of scary.
And you think about the hormones and stuff that they're using that are causing these girls to
Develop.
go into puberty before their time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our obesity is connected to that. That we're just eating all this stuff that's got the excessive hormone in it, and our bodies we're not active enough to get to process it out, and we're locking up the fatty tissues. So
Well,
yeah.
I guess one of the things that bothers me about the whole lockdown was that, the things that were good for you, like the gyms and all that, they were closed, but
Mm-hmm.
fast food places were sure open.
Yeah, yeah, sure enough, sure enough.
Sit
Well,
around and eat all day, and you can just call a number or get on your phone and order it online, and somebody will deliver it to your door.
yeah, we don't even have to go get it anymore. Somebody will bring it to us. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of goes to another little concern is, is it that we expect somewhere along the way, someone else will do everything for us? I'll just stay at home and play on my phone or play on my computer because someone else is going to do it. Who is that someone? We can't all be that someone. Or no, we can't all be the one sitting at home waiting on it to be delivered because somebody's got to make it, grow it, deliver it. Somebody's got to make the vehicle that drove it here. We're still
All the
dependent upon
skinny
one another.
people. Well, you seen that movie Wally?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you should watch that movie because it's almost prophetic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Disney movie. Believe it's Disney, and I mean the people just let everything, all the computers and everything, do everything for them, and they're just in a hover chair, and then they're all as big as a house. That's all they do. They just float around all day and let somebody else do it, or the robots do it. So yeah, very prophetic.
Yeah, is evolution real? That one of these days we'll just be blobs with thumbs?
We'll be a one with our love seat.
Yeah.
A combination human and chair.
Hmm.
So you've got to have some really good stories about crazy things that's happened over the years, whether it be in septic systems or the food industry or any of those. Go ahead and give us one, just one.
Mm. Mm. You know, you step gingerly into those territories, because if you uh, say someone's name and it comes out, you know, I was taught to talk about those that are the success stories instead of the nightmares as far as repeating it. Allow me on that. You know, I don't inspect food places anymore, but 20 some odd 20 years of inspecting them. What I'll give you is um, two rules. One is I avoid buffet tables.
Mm.
One, they're somewhat notorious for not attending to the temperature controls that they should. And bacteria that cause foodborne illness, you can't see them or smell them or taste them. And they need the same four things that we do: time, temperature, time, which keeps ticking, temperature, which is a suitable temperature, not too cold, not too hot, just like us. They need food and water. And so, in that we're talking about food, we've got the food and water. And so you've got two other controls, time and temperature. And if you're not attending to those in some form or fashion, and there are rules in place for attending to that, but my experience was that buffet tables were somewhat notoriously out of alignment with those rules. So between that and knowing what people do with their hands all day, I'm a people and I know what I do with my hands. Um, just imagine that, and then that's what's been touching the spoon that you're serving yourself with here in a little bit.
That's
I mean,
why I wear gloves when I go to the gas pump.
yeah, well, you know, on the comforting side for you there is that it's a metal gas pump, and bacteria and microbes don't live very well on metal. If you go back to your little biology class in 7th grade where you put a nickel in a petri dish and you swabbed it with, you know, some kind of bacteria, it didn't grow very well around the nickel. And so metals have a tendency to break the cell walls. And so
True.
there's some comfort in that. It's dry, so there's not much water. Could there be something on it that might have come out of a septic system? Yeah, it's possible. But, you know, I wouldn't say don't wear gloves, but I wouldn't want to panic you. I'm trying not to develop a world that is microphobic. There are more good microbes than bad ones, and in all honesty, we need them on us and in us, or we will not survive. They have a function. They are doing work for us, and so you don't want to get to be microphobic. On that gas pump, though, don't get gas on your hands and then use a hand sanitizer to clean them.
That'll
You,
burn.
yeah, it can burn your skin horribly. So soap and water's been doing wonders for us for centuries. Just soap and water, soap and water. Okay. So back to the buffet lines. I stay away from buffet lines because I know what folks have been doing. And the other general rule that applies to any restaurant that you might want to go to is go to the restroom first.
And wash your hands, for heaven's
Yeah,
sake.
wash your hands, but you know, just have a look around. Are they maintaining the restroom? Granted, it's going to get a little bit dirty because folks are going
Of course.
to wash their hands and splash water, and they're going to throw paper towels down and miss the trash can, and you know that's all normal day stuff. But if the sink is dangling from the wall and the water's not running, the floors are broken up, the toilet is cockeyed and leaking, go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the proprietor won't attend to what he knows you see, he's probably not doing much in the kitchen either, and probably not teaching food safety to his employees. And
Right.
so, you know, it's just kind of a correlating factor that I saw in my years of inspecting restaurants, that they're not attending to what you're looking at. They're probably not attending to things in the back where it is critical.
True. Well, I can tell you two quick stories
Mm-hmm.
There were some of my favorites. One when I worked for the sewer department, and it's not gross, but we were fixing manhole covers and putting the concrete around them,
Mm-hmm.
And as we're going down the road, me and the guy that was working with me, kept hearing this little kid saying, "Hey, hey, grandma, hey, grandma." Man, I heard that all the way down the street, and I'm like, "This shouldn't these kids be in school?" And I kept looking, I couldn't find anybody. Kept looking, and finally we got up to this one house, and it was really loud. And I looked up under the car porch, and there was one of them, what do you call them, the parrots that was sitting there. I guess it mocked one of the kids. It was screaming, "Hey, grandma, hey." And the second one was another bird story, is when you and I were doing a mold remediation, and they had taken their bird out, and I guess they had it in the front, and they said, "Watch this," and they tell it to sing, and it go, "I left my heart in San Francisco."
I forgot about that.
Hey, sometimes you miss those old days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as to other stories of food horrors, I've got stories that would make you not want to sit down and eat anywhere. It almost scare you to the point that you don't trust anyone anywhere. And being a food inspector can get kind of jaded like that. That you get so wary or alert to, oh goodness gracious, that it takes the joy of dining out away from you. So go with those two principles of hit the bathroom first. If that makes you comfortable, go ahead and give it a shot. But remember those four things: time, temperature, food and water. The food and water is there. Time and temperature is the only other two controls. And so if they're serving you something supposed to be hot, it ought to be hot. And if it ought to be cold, it ought to be cold.
So it's safe to eat at the Buc-ee's here in Texas.
Let's not make a generalization. I've never inspected a Buc-ee's.
That's the cleanest bathrooms I ever seen.
I will say, from a customer perspective of someone who has a little bit of knowledge of this kind of thing, they seem to run a pretty good show. For what I can witness on the outside, it's a pretty good show.
So is there anything new coming to the industry in any of those categories?
Well, in the world of food safety, the Texas legislature is about to adopt the Food and Drug Administration general guidelines as the rule instead of the Texas-specific Texas Food Establishment rules. And that nearly tripled the size of the rule book. And to some degree, it may be good, and to some degree, it complicates life considerably.
May be monotonous,
burdensome.
Yeah.
It's a huge set of rules that standardization so that everyone is on the same page and doing the same inspection from one jurisdiction to another is going to be more challenging. Everyone's got to throw out their inspection forms and start over as far as that is concerned. Everybody's got to kind of up their training levels so that they know what that new set of rules is. It sounded like a good idea from a legislative perspective, but it may, it's going to be a challenge. Let's just say that.
People going to have to get recertified?
Let's say that is a standardization process, and it's hard to do when you've got not enough inspectors to begin with. As many as there are, how do you standardize all of them without adequate folks to get around from a knowledgeable point and standardize every one of those across the state of Texas? It's a huge state, and we're all spread out.
Yeah.
Some are one-person operations, and some are 40. It's a mind-boggling challenge.
You need to go to work for Looking Back. There's a post office and a bar, and that's it.
Yeah.
Literally, if you sneezed, you'd miss the town.
Yep. Keep life simple. But we are heading more and more to the big metropolises. So, and they're only swelling and getting bigger. So yeah, that's kind of a dream world there.
Well, things change. They're always constantly changing. You never know what's around the corner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and you've got a conference coming up, right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. We, because of COVID, had to cancel last year, but the Texas Environmental Health Association is going to try and have a annual education conference again, October 6, 7, and 8, with a pre-conference track on on-site sewage facilities the day before. Anyway, it's all going to be at the Kalahari Resort in Round Rock, Texas. Fantastic, beautiful resort, and a very nice facility for the conference itself, and a lot of good information related to environmental and public health to be shared. Basically, we're bringing in all these governmental and privately employed sanitarians and code enforcement officers to come together, network a little bit, talk about the nightmares that COVID has brought to them, because it upped the workload for most of them across the board. Our profession is disease prevention. This is just one great, big, amazing event to be a witness to from a disease prevention perspective. And anyway, we're going to try and hold a COVID safe conference with lots of space between each other, some masks available. We're encouraging the vaccine, but not requiring, but encouraging, because we're disease prevention specialists. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk on-site sewage facilities, septic systems. We're going to talk food safety, illegal dumping, swimming pool safety. The list goes on. If it's a potential environmental or public health hazard, we're probably going to be talking about it and trying to empower our members to be able to do their jobs better, to protect you, the citizens of Texas, from the hazards that are potentially out there. What's kind of interesting is that we're a rather invisible profession. We do all this work to prevent disease and contamination, and basically, if we're successful in it, folks generally don't know we're there, and so they don't know the benefit that they've received from our work, because they're not sick and dying in the hospital or in the graveyard. And so we're basically invisible. We do great things as a profession, and it's behind a veil of not secrecy, but folks just don't know we're out there doing it. Unless we have to bring that education and enforcement to your door, you don't know that we're doing it. The vector control, the mosquito control that you and I did, folks didn't know what we were up to. They saw the truck, but we did bigger things than that, trying to eliminate breeding grounds instead of just spraying. If you eliminate the breeding ground, you knock out thousands everywhere you're successful at, versus a few hundred spraying a quarter of the city a night. So
there was folks that, I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it just seems like people just thought we were out there giving them a hard time because they had some tires in their yard. They didn't realize we were trying to keep them from getting swarmed by mosquitoes or possibly catching some kind of a disease. Right.
And interestingly, the mosquitoes typically that breed in the little containers, like you mentioned, the tires and the bottles and the trash, the clogged up gutters, the bird baths, the list goes on. All these little containers, the leaking water line or sewer line, puddles of water under the house, those mosquitoes are the ones that spread disease, not so much those that are what we call the floodwater mosquitoes that breed out in the forest, and they just hatch out every once in a while when the rains hit just right. So it's us who do the damage to ourselves more often than not. And because of that kind of behavior, we're getting dengue and other diseases back in the country that have been either never present or haven't been present for a really long time. But because mosquitoes fly, and because we fly and we bring mosquitoes with us in the airplane sometimes, we have diseases here They used to be over in Asia or South America, but they weren't here, but now they're here.
Of course.
And we're not dropping by the thousands and millions, but a few dozen to a couple of hundred a year are very possibly dying from encephalitis and dengue and some of the other mosquito-borne diseases. So anyway, our profession does a lot of very important good work, and I happen to be honored to be the incoming president this year. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long journey. I've learned a lot through these years. I'm in my 36th year, and I'm trying to position myself and the association to pass what I've learned and pass it forward and make it a bigger, greater thing, and maybe expand the knowledge of the public that this profession exists, and we're out there helping them so much.
I find it very important that people get educated on a lot of these things, and they'll realize where we're coming from. Of course, I'm not in the business anymore, but I mean, when it comes to the septic systems and even with the food preparation, I took a class because I was going to be a waiter, and you have to know how to handle food and all those things, and people don't realize what really goes into that. They think, oh, you just go back there and you make a sandwich and then you're done. No, there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. Well, where do you put your hand when you set the glass down or pick the glass up? The straw, is it wrapped? A couple of things have come to mind there. Yeah. Okay. The education, we would prefer not to enforce. We would prefer to educate, because if you can understand what, and more importantly, why, you're more than likely to embrace the wisdom of trying to change behaviors. The vaccine is an example. I'm not saying everybody has to have the vaccine, because some can't or shouldn't, but everyone should at least consider it from a perspective of vaccines work. They have protected us from numerous ailments for decades now. This isn't brand new science. This is something that started in the 40s with polio, but we're doing vaccines for polio, for smallpox, for mumps, measles, rubella, meningitis, and all of these are required vaccines now if you want to go to school. This is not something brand new, and it's not governmental control. It's called living. If you want to live a healthy life, then you might want to consider this. I didn't grow up knowing anybody with polio, but I worked with two, and they were somewhat crippled because of polio. This generation has not seen that. It doesn't exist except for in places like, say, Afghanistan, where they won't let us come in and give the vaccines. But back to why. If you understand why, then you're more likely to change behaviors. So, for instance, let's say, got two quick examples. Let's say flies and food. Why should you care that you don't want flies flying and landing on your food? You shake your head and smirk as though you might have a picture, but where was that fly last? They basically decaying matter, and I don't think I need to say what that potentially is, but decaying matter could be a dead carcass, or it could be something that carcass got rid of before it died. Then he flies around and he's got that on his feet, and so there's bacteria in his footprint. And when he sits down on your food, he regurgitates onto your food and then slurps up the partially digested food. That's how he eats. Now, that's pretty nasty when you think about it. And one of the diseases that flies can spread around causes hemorrhagic diarrhea. All right,
I must put a disclaimer: do not listen to this just before you're going for supper.
Exactly. Anyway, hemorrhagic, just in case you don't know, that means you're bleeding and you're diuretic, and that is not a pleasant thought. Okay, so off of that, I know that's bad enough. And so the other is, let's pretend that we're ignoring our sewer system, be it public collection, so it's just a pipe from our house down to the pipe going to the treatment plant, or our on-site sewage facility septic system, and it's not working properly and it's bubbling up somewhere. The dog's out playing in that. He doesn't know. He doesn't care. It's just water. He drinks it. He probably will survive that. But he's out there doing that, and then he comes and sits on the couch with you, because we are social animals and dogs are social animals, and either we abuse our animals and put them on a chain somewhere, or we invite them into the house because they're part of the family. Well, if he's on the couch with you and you're petting him, and so now whatever he's been playing in is on the couch and on your hand, and then you want to go make a sandwich and you don't wash your hands first. Good enough?
That's good enough. Well, I must stress another disclaimer, and neither of one of us are doctors, so you make sure you consult with your doctor before you do anything like vaccines or any of that. So
Sure.
I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying that's something you got to discuss with your doctor.
Yep.
And
yep.
Well, believe it or not, John, our time is drawing to an end.
Well, I sure appreciate the time with you. This has been, and I've been enthused for the opportunity and excited for the chance to visit with you. Hope we've said something today that held some benefit to someone in your viewership.
Well, I can tell you that it does take someone special to do the things that we've done through the years. It's not for everyone, but it's something that you should consider. I mean, at least getting somewhat of knowledge of what we do, because you'll understand why there's so many rules in place and the things that we have to do. And it's for your benefit. It's not, just we're trying to get money out of you, or we're just being, just difficult. It's just there's rules for a reason.
Boy, you have hit it. We hear it all the time that the government's just trying to take money. It's just a money grab. It's just a control thing. No, the only reason these rules are here is because people have died. Mm-hmm. And we've learned how and why they died. And so we've gotten smarter as a society and written some boundaries so that we know, we want to remember the history of why. And we created a rule that said, this will prevent that from happening again and again and again.
Just be like my grandson. Why?
Yeah. It's the best question.
Something that people probably should consider as well. These rules are in place because somebody's actually attempted it or gotten sick or died from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it tells you anything, those little visors that you put in your window of your vehicle, mm-hmm. most of them come with a warning. It says, remove before driving. So somebody out there actually tried.
It would. Didn't see the report, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So some of the things people do.
Yeah, but there's an old man one time shared this expression with me. He said, John, I explained some story to him, and he turned to me real calm and he says, John, folks is just the funniest kind.
I remember that. I remember
it's a
that
daily
story.
Repeated expression now.
Yeah, there's a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us, and I hope people found it informative. If this is your first time to join the channel, please come back. We appreciate you stopping by. We really appreciate you being here. And for those that are, they're listening on a regular basis, thank you for your support. I'm going to leave some links up so you'll be able to maybe visit John's website, or if you have questions, you'll be able to get a hold of him. Bombard him at 2:00 in the morning. He loves that.
Now, I do welcome folks if I could be of some value to them. My mission is to clean this world up a little bit and protect your health. So if I can answer a question or help you get there, then by all means, reach out to me.
And if you're, how far out do you go around Houston?
I like a 10 to 30 mile circle, but I've got some customers that are out about 70 miles. And I've gone further than that on a rare occasion when the need was great enough.
If you're in the Houston area, you think maybe John might be able to help you, why don't you give him a call? He does great work, and he's a great person, and he doesn't mind explaining things to you. He's somebody that you want on your side, that's for sure. And he's been good to me. He's been good to my family. I've appreciated everything he's done. And, I haven't always been there for you, John, but you're still like a brother to me.
We are brothers. And you were there for me when you told me you'd be there. You had to do what you had to do. Other than that, there's a path that we all must take, and you've chosen yours. And I'm good with our friendship and relationship.
I appreciate that. Well, until the next time, people, take care. God bless, and peace.
Thank you all.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network